three most famous directors would be Tim Burton, Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick. On a personal level, he was very nice because he was very friendly, which is kind of surprising because, you know, he's a multi-trillionaire director and you wouldn't necessarily expect him to be. But so on a personal level, he's very nice. He's very good with his crew. He's quite inspiring. You know, he is Steven Spielberg, so you kind of want to do a good job for him. He's a phenomenally quick director. He doesn't do many takes, and he's very fast. Stanley Kubrick didn't talk to his crew very much. He's quite isolated. You know, he's kind of much more mythic figure, Stanley Kubrick, and he did multiple takes of things, and generally kept this camera quite static. Whereas Spielberg was moving the camera around a lot and doing multiple cuts. Someone like Tim Burton, his directing style obviously is very quirky, but his production values are what really stand out. You know, he does a lot of drawings, and then give them to the art department. Yeah, you've got a very quirky person at Tim Burton. He's also very nice to the crew and a very nice, personable person. But you know you're going to be doing something fantastical. You've got Steven Spielberg, who's much more action-orientated, and you've got Stanley Kubrick, who's much more sedate and detailed down to the last microsecond of dialogue and camera movement and focus. Yeah, so everyone has a different style, basically. Well, you can either sort of just dive straight in and write a script, but you're trying to write a thriller. So I would suggest for a thriller, you want to try and layer it as much as possible. So you do need to really go in, you do need to write your story out first. It's much more helpful to write your story out first. So yes, you need a storyline. Like for example in TV, when you're pitching a series, you'll start off with like maybe half a page or a page document, which would be like a whole TV series, just gives a very brief outline of what you want. And then if they like that, they'll then ask you to break down. They'll just do a longer version, so you'll probably do like 6 pages on each episode. So you'll really get into grips with the story. And after that, then you have to do, well, you might have to do, I think they call something called a beat sheet or a scene by scene, which literally is just you go through every single scene that you're going to write, but without the dialogue, just all the action and how it all builds, and then you get to write the script. And that's quite useful because that lets you layer your story properly. So if you're writing a thriller and you want to have, you know, a red herring with a person who, you know, might be the killer or might not be or whatever, you can make sure you're layering it in all properly. So you've got your good beats of the story, because it's much easier to change it at that point rather than when you're actually writing the script. Because once you've got the script and it's like, you know, 120 pages of film or like 70 pages of a TV series or whatever, obviously it's much harder to then start picking it apart and moving things around. So you want to try and get your story nailed down as soon as possible. And then if you're going to be directing it, then you want to really be doing storyboards, because that makes save so much time, and doing shot lists so that when you turn up each day you know exactly what you're doing. Just as much preparation as possible, because for the writing of it, preparation is really important, because it just saves you time later on when you're actually all about saving time. Actually, it seems like you're kind of wasting your time when you're doing it in a way, because you think, I just want to write the script, but actually the more prep you put into planning your story, the better. And then when you're filming it, the more prep you put into, the temptation is sometimes to think, oh, I'll get on set and I'll kind of work it out when I get on set, but you'll find that there's just no time. Time just runs away like that. So if you've got a shot list and if you've got your storyboards, then you can turn up and you've got it all in your head, and you might improvise a bit on the day, but basically you've got your core idea, so you can just get on with it and motor on with it, and you can be confident about it. And that's the other thing as well, is if you've done the prep at all those different stages, then you can be confident about it. Because if you kind of just try and wing it, then you ultimately won't probably have the same confidence, and you'll just waste time. So you need to really keep an eye on your continuity, because that's the one thing that really pulls an audience out. So you need to you need to have someone who's going to really look at things like the levels of drinks in the scenes, people's hair, the lighting. So the lighting levels are always the same. If there's clouds in one shot and then it's sunny in the other, it's not going to cut together properly. Windy in one shot, not windy in the other. Things like that. Really important. Obviously costumes you've got to keep an eye on, and you've really got to keep an eye on your eye lines, and when you're shooting over the shoulder or different angles, make sure everything cuts together. So that's really your main prep thing, is making sure you know your shots, so you know they're going to cut together. And then on the day, when you're on the set, make sure that everything's consistent all the time. The wind, the sound, the lighting, all the props, and it's one of the things that's really easy to forget about because you're trying to make it look nice and sound nice, but you've got to keep an eye on everything because any of those things can ruin your shot. Well, like I said, there's this guy called Spike Milligan who was a huge hero of mine when I was growing up, and he was like in his 80s when he was on Gormenghast, and Gormenghast was the last thing he ever did, and he died a couple of years after that. And he was so ancient and sort of crumbly and old, and I was given the task of sort of looking after him, and I was really there, and he had lots of problems with depression and things, so he was quite a difficult character, but he kind of really latched onto me. So that was really lovely. That was like one of my sort of favourite memories. Would be Spike Milligan, but the more exciting answer is probably something like Gary Oldman or Johnny Depp, because they're because they're big stars, or I don't know if I work with Christopher Lee. Actually, was pretty cool. He was kind of slightly eccentric and weird, but then again, I really like, he's got so much history with him. Johnny Depp was very cool. Johnny Depp had done 3 films with Johnny Depp. I was only like assistant directors and runners on them, so I'm like his best friend, but I did get to know him. And he's very cool, so possibly him, but also I know you were going to ask me about Tom Hardy, and yeah, Tom Hardy, when I met him was 2005 or something, 6, something like that, 2005 I think, and so I didn't know who he was, but when he came on, I knew he'd done this thing called Star Trek Nemesis, and I wasn't a fan of Star Trek. I'm a Doctor Who fan, not a Star Trek fan, but I knew that he'd been in Star Trek Nemesis, so I'd sort of seen some pictures of him, and I thought, well, that's quite cool. He'd done some films, but I didn't really know anything about him, so I didn't come with any expectations, but he was a really interesting person. Of course, now he's become a huge mega star, and I got on really well with him, and it was nice to see him. I guess Johnny Depp, when I met him, was really famous and has just gone on to be famous, continued being famous, but Tom Hardy kind of wasn't famous, so it was kind of interesting to meet him at a stage in his career when he was at a stage in his career when all those exciting films like Bronson and Bane and Batman and The Fighter and all those things, they were kind of still ahead of him, and he was pretty cool. So yeah, probably Tom Hardy joined with Johnny Depp. Lighting is probably one of the most important things. So if you want to say you want to film you want a really spooky house or something, so you'll either go to a location which might be someone's house, or might be whatever it is, or you're going to build it in a studio. So first of all you've got the set designers, and you've got the art department. So so they'll design the set and dress the set if it's a location, or they'll design and build the set if it's in a studio. Then you have the props people who will prop it with all the spooky stuff, whatever you want. And then you'll have then we'll all arrive on set, and then so you'll also have, first of all, if you're filming on location, you have the location department who'll go out and find like 5 or 6 different locations that the director will then choose. So he'll choose the spooky one or the futuristic one or whatever it is that you want, and then the crew will arrive on set, and the cinematographer, the DOP will light it, the director of photography will light it, and that's probably one of the most important things, because if you're trying to create atmosphere, then lighting is really, really important. It's very difficult to have a spooky. Some films do it, but generally, if you're going to try and have a spooky scene, it's probably going to be night time. It might be foggy, so you might have some sort of smoke in the air, a little bit of mist. So I think lighting's the main one, and then obviously costumes. It's no good someone turning up in like a bright pink dress if you want them to be like a mysterious sort of dark cowled monk, because it would just be crazy. So, and then you've got your makeup. So you might have someone who's looking sort of deathly pale, so obviously that would be makeup. So all those things, so it's all the departments, the props, the art department, the costume, the makeup, the lighting, and they all come together to create your atmosphere. So that's why it's a really kind of team effort working on that film set. And then obviously the director then chooses how to shoot it. So he might choose to shoot it sort of all wide, or he might choose to shoot it close, or we might choose to sort of have the camera moving on a dolly, or we might have a crane shot. All those things will add the different atmospheres and different emphasis. And there was a last thing I was going to say, which was, I can't remember, but that's probably about enough. But obviously then the actors will then interpret the dialogue and interpret the scene. So all those people will all come together to create your atmosphere. I'm trying to remember what the last thing I was going to say was, but that's probably it, I think. What was your question? Create atmosphere on a set. Yeah, it's all those things. Basically, it's a collaboration between everybody. Oh yeah, the last thing then, also, then in post-production is how you edit it. Because obviously you could edit it really quickly, or you could edit it very slowly. You could linger on shots, or you could cut in and cut out. So all those things, and lastly the music, and all those things will give you either your really suspenseful scene, or a scene that just sort of falls apart, or a scene that's funny. Or so all those things. It's not just one element. It's all those things. And he'll be pushing for the mood that he wants to have in his production, but also he will also be relying on the actors to bring something to the table initially, so they'll rehearse it, but the actor's got to come with an idea, but then, you know, then again it's a collaborative process, and if the actor does something that the director doesn't like, the director will try and encourage the actor to do it in a different way, but generally speaking, yeah, the writers have the actors do have the sort of the lion's share of the choices of bringing out whatever emotions they want.